Well, today is going to be a special episode of why this is great and where you should start because, man, let me tell you right now, I'm going to be talking about someone who is very important to me. Someone who I have a very hard time shutting up about. I really don't know how else to introduce him. But today's video is about my GOAT, my king, Alan Moore.
Jesus Christ, I could write this.
Hello everyone, Britton here, also known as Some Okie Dude, and I am back with another episode of Why This Is Great and Where to Start. Why did I put bullet points? I've had a long day today. But anyway, I'm doing another episode of why this certain author or genre is great and where you should start with them. And today I am talking about who is possibly my favorite comic book writer of all time, and that of course is Alan Moore. Possibly my favorite, or definitely? I'm going to lean on definitely. So, yeah. Let's get into it. So, if you didn't gather, Alan Moore is not only my favorite comic book writer of all time, but for my money, he is possibly the greatest comic book writer of all time. Again, possibly or definitely, I'll let you guys argue that in the comment section, but he's definitely one in my books. He is definitely the one in my books. His touch has been felt across the comic book medium and pop culture in general. I mean, my God, what hasn't been influenced by Alan Moore and his devious imagination, if you will? And a lot of people have asked me where I should start with Alan Moore, but, you know, we'll get to that in a second. I can't pretend to be non-partial here, though, folks. I love Moore. Aside from Robert Kirkman, he was the first comic book writer that I followed avidly. And it was through his devious designs that I discovered, well, partially what I discovered, what comic books could be, definitely. And in short, he unlocked a whole new world for me and for so many others. And I want to appreciate that today. As well as share the love for other people who have not discovered the majesty that is Northampton's very own Warlock, Mr. Alan Moore. Just a lovely man. He's a great guy. What can I say? He's a great comic book writer. I don't actually know him personally, so, you know, I won't say. Now, before I get into this recommendation thing, like I said in my last video, it can be a little complicated telling people where to start with Alan Moore. But not for the same reason that it can be complicated to jump into Dennis Lehane's work, where it was a bit complicated recommending Lehane for people because, well, you can kind of jump in wherever, and you can probably, you know, get in just fine. But with Moore, it's a little different. While I wouldn't say Moore is a guy where you can jump into wherever with his work, at the same time, he's not really like a Philip K. Dick, where there are stages of his career that you must keep in mind before you read him. And for instance, I mean, you definitely could read Watchmen, for instance, and enjoy it as a standalone story, but I don't know if it would click immediately for people. I don't know if people would really see what makes that book so great. You would probably think, I mean, it is a great story. It is a really great story, but I don't know if it would really click for people without some context. So I'm going to hesitate on recommending that one as one of your first ones. On the other hand, though, I likely wouldn't recommend From Hell as your first Moore read either, as it's one of his more concept-heavy works where he goes on about the occult, life, universe, and all that in between. But a lot of people have been asking me, because I'm such a big Moore fan, and I've talked about his comics a few times on my channel, what I think would be really good jumping-off points for anyone who is curious about Alan Moore and are unsure where to start. So hopefully, this video will prove helpful, and I'll get into the recommendations before too long. So, yeah, let's just get into it. So, the first one I'll mention is one of the comics he did during his time with DC, which I would actually say is a pretty good jumping-off point for a lot of his work. You can check out a lot of his DC stuff, and it's pretty accessible for the most part. Like, his Superman stories are very good, Batman the Killing Joke's very good. Most of the stuff he did with DC, I think, would be a good place to start. But I think his best DC proper work that he did that wasn't Watchmen anyway was actually a run that he did on Swamp Thing back in the 80s, which has really jumped up as being one of my favorite Alan Moore things of all time. But Saga the Swamp Thing would be my first recommendation for where to jump on first. This run, what can I say? I mean, you don't really need to know very much about Swamp Thing. I mean, Swamp Thing is kind of, and not, I don't want to say generic because that sounds bad, but Swamp Thing is a very, or at least he was before Alan Moore showed up. He was a pretty basic character. He was a guy who had a lab accident and it ended up turning him into this muck-encrusted monstrosity. Alan Moore came into the picture and completely flipped the script on all of that and basically was like, no, that was all bullshit. Here's actually what's going on. And that's what I would say is one of the reasons why Alan Moore is phenomenal. He has a unique ability to take something and completely flip it on its head and show he has a gift, and he has demonstrated this time and time again throughout his work of taking a comic book character or a comic book certain thing or even events in real history such as in From Hell and kind of tilt it in a way where you can kind of see it from a different perspective, and he'll show you all of the different concepts and ideas and themes that you can pull from it and story ideas you can pull from it. And I really felt that he did that the best in Swamp Thing. I really love this run a lot. I definitely would love to talk about it at some point because, I mean, this run is easily in top 5 my favorite thing Alan Moore has ever done. I really love how he flips the script on Swamp Thing. It's probably my favorite instance of him flipping the script on a established character, aside from the other one that I'll be talking about in a little bit. But Saga the Swamp Thing is really Alan Moore in rare form. You really get to see him. He doesn't have a big message that he needs to spread. He doesn't have a plot that he needs to get out for the masses to see. Swamp Thing is interesting because it's kind of just him kind of sitting back and figuring out, and he's kind of just walking around figuring out what ideas he can play with, and he finds ideas, and it's just kind of him wandering around seeing what he'll find along the way. This is much more multifaceted. There's a lot of different directions that he goes in this run, but I do think it is very accessible for a lot of people. Now, he does kind of lay it thick with the text a little bit. That's just his style. He really likes his walls of text from time to time. But I do think it's really well done here, and I really love a lot of the stories that he would play with. Some of my favorite single issues of comics have been done in this very run, including the very second issue of this run, which is called The Anatomy Lesson, which that is where I really think that Moore's run really begins. Issue 20 is good, but it's basically him just wrapping up all of the other threads from the previous run that he was doing. But really, issue 21 is where I really think that the issue begins, and it's probably one of, if not my favorite comic book issue of all time. The Anatomy Lesson is just a masterclass of comic book storytelling. And there's even some other ones, like Pog, which I actually love so much, I bought the damn thing. You might have seen it in a few of my videos. And I have it framed because I really enjoy it that much. Also, not to be missed is the stunning artwork from Stephen Bissette and John Toddleman. I'll just show some of it here. I would recommend picking up this copy of Swamp Thing because I know that they recolored it a few years ago, and I've looked at some of the panels, and they just don't look as good as some of the panels here. Like, you can just look at this. This is really well done. And I really think that the artwork in this really is, it's one of those rare cases where the right people at the right time really came to this book, and I really enjoy what he did. Now, there was I really enjoy what Toddleman and Bissette did. There's some other stuff. I really like how they kind of draw out the facial features where they look kind of uncanny. It's really quite neat how they did it, and I really like how they did it. There were some other artists who came on later, like Sean McManus, who did Pog, which is one of my favorite issues I mentioned earlier, and also damn it, I'm blanking. And Rick Veitch, sorry, Rick Veitch is it? I don't remember, but he also did some of the later issues, and even took over the book after Alan Moore left. And from what I've heard, is also pretty good too. But Bissett and Taliban were just phenomenal on this work. I really enjoy their artwork quite a bit. Again, here's just some here's just some panels from book one here, and they have plenty of other issues. And I feel like their style really works with this kind of book that is kind of a horror monster book. But it's really good. But really why I like this book so much is that it's really more in rare form, where he's just kind of figuring out where he's going along the way. He takes ideas from wherever he can get them, and he just puts them on the page, and it's really a joy to watch. And I can't give it all to him. I mean, Totleben and Bissett really helped with some of the stories, like the Nuke Face papers. That was their idea. There's a couple of other stories I can't think of at the moment that was also their idea, but the one I remember is Nuke Face. That was their idea, which is also a very good, page they did. But yeah. Also, if you're a fan of The Sandman and really enjoy The Sandman and really love what Neil Gaiman did, I would highly recommend checking out this book, because you can see some of the ideas that he would play with in The Sandman first came from this book, such as the House of Mystery and some of the other stuff that I won't mention, because I do think it is meant to be read. And truly, truly sublime entertainment. I would love to talk about this at some point. I don't think a review would do this justice. I definitely would love to have this on as a conversation at some point. But yeah, the second book that I will mention is really the one of what I like to call Moore's big books, where he really goes on and really one of the big comics that he would do, like Watchmen, like From Hell, like Lost Girls, where he has a specific purpose and message that he wants to get out and wants to share with the masses. Which ironically is kind of what this book is about. But anyway, that book, the first book I would recommend for those who want to get into Moore's big books, as I like to call them, is V for Vendetta, that he did with David Lloyd. I really, I know a lot of people really like the movie, and don't get me wrong, I do think that the movie is probably the best Moore adaptation we're going to get, aside from maybe the Watchmen adaptation, which I've kind of vomited in my mouth saying that, because I don't really like Zack Snyder's movies. But I do think at least the V for Vendetta movie I had the least amount of problems with. I thought it was pretty good for the most part. But the book, I think, is even better. I really enjoy what Moore and Lloyd did here. It is a very British story, so if that kind of turns you off, so if that might kind of stop you, I do want to recommend that. There are a lot of British references and stuff like that. But I do think this is probably the most accessible, because this is just a really well-told, really damn fine penned and illustrated yarn by Moore and David Lloyd. And I have talked about this book a little bit. I have talked about it a few times. I did a review of it, which I'll link down below. I also talked about it with my friend Livia from Livia J. Elliott. I will link our conversation about it. I did with her. Varsha, I think her name is, and also Jared from the Fantasy Thinker. We did a long conversation about V for Vendetta that I'm actually quite proud of. I think it's, I really enjoyed what we managed to do there. I really liked that conversation a lot. I think we did really good on that one. But V for Vendetta is probably the first big book of Moore that I would recommend. It's probably the most accessible in terms of what he's talking about. I mean, there are certainly references in here that might fly over some people's heads if you're not familiar with, like, British lore and political history. But it's also just a really good story about a guy who wants to upturn the system and create something better from it. Also, the art from it is really good. David Lloyd was really onto something here. I really like the kind of noir-like atmosphere they put into this book. I also really like some of the experimentation they did with, like, how to read, like, how to show a comic. Let me just find one of those real quick. Let me see. There you go, like that. I really enjoy that a lot. You can just read it like that. It's really quite neat. And again, I think they recolored it recently. I recommend it in the original colors because I really like them. Or if you're a real hardcore fan like me, you could find the original Warrior illustrations, which is in black and white, which is also really interesting. And I would really like to see DC do like a noir version like they've done for like The Dark Knight Returns at some point. I think that would be really neat. just do this in black and white, because I saw some of the Warrior illustrations that they did before they put it in color, and it looked really good. I think it would really merit for a black and white version if DC would ever get around to doing that. That's inappropriate. I'm not going to show that. Here is some more panels. Really, really well done stuff. And it's also interesting seeing more at the beginning of the story and more at the end. You can definitely see the shift, because this is one of his earlier works. I really like the pacing in this is really well done. And it's also just more kind of, having a good time, and, well, not really having a good time. Like I said, this is probably his first really big, serious book, kind of like Watchmen in that way. But it's also just really, really fun and interesting. I really enjoy the themes he plays with here, and kind of how he acknowledges kind of his worries about where society was going at that time. And also that's where we got the iconic mask. Let me just show that real quick. There, you can see it right there. It was David Lloyd's idea. I give credit where credit's due, and Moore just thought that was brilliant, and they went along with it. And also you can see it on the cover. I don't know why I showed you one of the panels, but yeah, V for Vendetta is probably the first big book that I would recommend for Moore. It's pretty accessible for the most part. It's not one where, like Watchmen, where you can... Watchmen's the same way, where you can read it as a standalone story, but I think there's also some references and ideas and stuff that's being played with that you need some context before you read it. But in V for Vendetta, there is not as much of that. There might be some people who disagree with me about that, but I do think this is probably his most accessible big book that he's done. That and Watchmen are probably his most accessible big books that he's done. But I would say I would edge V for Vendetta over Watchmen a little bit. But yes, V for Vendetta is my second recommendation. So yeah, there you go. My third one, my last one, is actually the first really big work that he did, and that is really his first major superhero deconstruction as well, where he also started it alongside V for Vendetta, and that is Miracle Man, or Marvel Man, if you're from the other side of the pond. Miracle Man is Swamp Thing edges it out, because I really love how he reimagined Swamp Thing. But number two of my favorite, more just taking an idea and just completely flipping it on its head. Number two, my close number two would be Miracle Man. I really love how he flips the narrative of Mickey Moran, who turns into the character of Miracle Man when he utters the magic word. He's kind of like Shazam or Captain Marvel, if you're an old school DC fan, in that way. But you really see him flip that idea on its ear, and you get to see, oh, where did he come from? Why is he that way? How do the mechanics of his switch work? And especially towards the end, I think is some of the best stuff that Alan Moore has ever done, especially issues 15 and 16, which I won't spoil, because I do think these are issues that are meant to be read, but they are some of the most haunting comics I have ever read in my entire life. And I've read my good share of comics that have stuck with me. But, I mean, issue 15 in particular, there is some really gnarly stuff in that book that I think should be read, that they need to be read. I cannot do it justice talking about here. I would love to do a Miracle Man discussion at some point, or a video about Miracle Man, because I think it's one of Moore's most underrated works. But I think it's also his most accessible superhero deconstruction, aside from Swamp Thing. Miracle Man, you can kind of just get the gist of what he's what he is, what he's about, and just let Moore kind of do his thing. Also, the art in it is really good as well. He didn't have a consistent artist throughout the thing, but my favorite of the artists that he worked with, one, John Toddleben, who helped him with Swamp Thing, did some of the last issues, including the issue 15 that I was telling you about. And also, Gary Leach did some really good work on some of the first couple issues. Though for some reason he makes Miracle Man look like Paul Newman, so that's just kind of a given. But why I really think Miracle Man would be a good place to start is because it's kind of the first place where Moore outlined what he was going to do with the comic book medium as a whole. It was really where he first introduced his approach to superheroes, which is, what would they be like in our world? What would they look like in a different setting? And him just kind of flipping the superhero narrative on its head. And especially towards the end, I think is some of the best stuff he's ever done. Though it does kind of, it's also, I think, an important read because I do think it gives some good context for Watchmen, for when you get to Watchmen, because some of the themes he would develop in Watchmen, he first developed here. And I think that Miracle Man is a little more accessible than Watchmen because the hook is more accessible, I think, than Watchmen, because Watchmen is a very layered comic. There's a lot going on in that book. Miracle Man, not so much. You can sit through Miracle Man, you can read it and have a good time with it. Same thing with Swamp Thing as well, but I think Miracle Man in general would be a really good place to start. And of course, some of the art is just absolutely ridiculous, especially when John Tottleman comes on. Absolutely insane. Just some of the stuff he pulls. Like I said, this is meant to be read. You should go out and read it. One of the best things Moore has ever done, I think. And sadly, I don't own a copy just yet. I did see at my local comic shop that the omnibus is there, so I might pick it up. I'm not sure yet, but I would really enjoy having that. But sadly, I do not have it, so I can't show you what I'm talking about. But Miracle Man is a really great place to start with Moore, in my opinion. I think is a really great place to start, and I think will impress people because it is very, very good. So, yeah. So, okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I've kind of rambled on as far as I could about Moore. These are the 3 comics that I specifically recommend people should start with when reading Moore. There are some other stuff that some people might bring up, like Tom Strong or Top 10. I just haven't read those yet, so sorry if I didn't bring those up. These are just 3 that I am very familiar with that I think would be really good places to start, and I think are some of his best works. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys go out and read some of Alan Moore's comics. For my money, he is the greatest comic book writer who ever lived. And aside from Stan Lee, he is the most influential comic book writer who has ever graced the earth. Him, Stan Lee, and like Will Eisner made me in terms of writers. I'm not talking about artists. I'm strictly talking about writers here. Or even Harvey Kurtzman. But anyway, I don't want to get too much into the comic nerddom. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys check out Alan Moore's comics. I hope you check out some of these comics that I mentioned. You can find me on Twitter. You can also find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Blue Sky and Instagram. I don't use Blue Sky very much, but give it a shot. But I am starting to get used to it some more. Also, like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. I really like hearing from you guys. Especially love hearing comments from you guys. If you guys have your own recommendations of Alan Moore's comics that you would want me to read, feel free, on where to start anyway, feel free to let me know in the comments. These are just the 3 books that I personally would recommend reading first before really getting into Moore's work. Yeah, I really enjoyed this video. Hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Till next time, see you guys later. Bye-bye.